This is a CW Spiral, a podcast run by two Barchies and a Bughead. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Michael Patterson,
and Reed Gaudens,
bringing you history about the network, the latest news, and in-depth spoiler-filled discussions of some of our favorite shows on the CW. So, there's not much CW news to share this week. I mean, with the strikes going on, it's going to be very limited for a while, but we do have some updates to give information on. So if you enjoyed Down to Earth with Zac Efron and you don't have a Netflix account, and you were enjoying Fantastic Friends, which these two shows got pulled from air, they are going to be streaming on the CW app and CWTV.com. According to Brad Swartz, that's what they're going to do with the pulled shows. And I don't know if this means that like you're going to get all the episodes at once or if you're just going to continue to get weekly drops, but you can check their streaming service just to see the rest of the season if you were enjoying it. Also, Perry Sook, the CEO of Nexstar Media Group, gave a disappointing update, but it's like an update everyone kind of anticipated. With the strikes continuing on, that means the CW shows have been delayed, which is Superman and Lois, All-American Homecoming, and Walker. Ooh, nearly forgot it. Are going to be pushed further into 2024. I don't know if that means that like if you were anticipating seeing them in January, you won't be seeing them in January, or if we're going to be looking at like a COVID schedule again where a lot of shows are going to be popping up in March.
I feel like a lot of people saw this coming, and it's not really that much of a surprise. But yeah, I think that right now all they can hope for is that the shows do air before the next TV season begins, because no one has any kind of time frame for how long the strikes will last. I mean, we knew Superman at Lois, Homecoming, and Walker, I think I said that right, were the three that were supposed to come in 2024 anyway. So again, that's not that much of a surprise. It's just how late in 2024 they'll come. And now we know All American will be joining them because, of course, that was supposed to premiere at the end of this year. So, I mean, like the CW aren't alone in this. Every TV network's probably going to have to face this. They just have their fall schedule piled out with acquisitions, and they may need to find some more to fill the spring season, depending on how late it takes these shows to arrive.
I do think we're looking at mid-season next year because I feel like it would have to have been resolved now to get any January premieres, because I don't think any network wants to rush out like, oh, we filmed 3 episodes, let's get them out before the end of the year and then go on hiatus again just to get something out. Like, that's not sustainable. So may as well just hold it and wait.
Yeah, I mean, so the former executive producer and showrunner of Law and Order SVU and Criminal Intent, his name is Warren Late. He shared on, I was going to say Twitter, he shared on X that
cursed, so cursed.
That so the window for a 13 episode season is still open. He was like, if they somehow ended the strikes by Labor Day, so in September, early September, they'd be able to open the writers' rooms, which typically take about 5 weeks before shooting begins, which he said they can condense if they need to, in order to like get these episodes written and start getting them filming in the early fall. And that's how you would get a 13 episode season. If they miss that window, then we're probably going to be looking at reduced episode counts. So, which Superman Lois already has one. It's 10 episodes. For CW, I don't know if that means that they would have all the other scripted originals that have been held go down to 10 as well, or if they'll move them. I feel like with All American, because of the sports initiative, they're going to try to either, they might get that one out front first, just so they can have them during football season.
The episode count for All American season 6?
They did not. And typically it's like in the high teens. So
okay, that's right. Have they ever had like a 20 episode season?
I want to say they did have a 20 episode season. I know they've had a 16 episode one. Because they've gotten episodes increasing every season, I believe.
Yeah, it was just interesting that it felt like it was always Riverdale and Dynasty that were like locked into the 20 plus episode season. It was like they were one of the only 2 shows on the CW that still had that, and I was like, feels like All American should have been included in that, but none of my business.
I think they might have been though, because but it's hard to tell now, like unless we do the Google, which I'm not going to do right now, what the episode counts are, because when the pandemic hit, the schedules got messed all up. So we would have extended watches. So it'd be like, that's still on. Like even Superman and Lois, like 15 episodes, and we're all like, dang, you still going. We love you. But we thought you'd be crazy. Done. Yeah. I know.
I'm still like emotionally recovering from that one season. I want to say it was like 2009, 2010. It was definitely Naruto season 2, where the CW is like, you know what we're gonna do to combat having to do like repeats? We're gonna just take the show off the air after like the first week of December and then bring it back in March so we can run through the rest of the season, no repeats. And when you're young, that amount of time between like a mid-season break feels like an eternity. Like I was despondent for those 3 months. But like now I would be like, I prefer that. I would prefer that to what we got was it season 2 when it was just like on a week, off a week, 2 weeks off, and then we get 2 more episodes. It was just like all over the place.
I'm pretty sure there was a 10-week period where 2 episodes aired and then it was off again. That's just bonkers. Season 1 wasn't much better, didn't it? Go off, I think, after 5 episodes for like 8, 9.
Especially with a 15 episode season.
Yeah, exactly. And it took them from January to June to air 15 episodes. That was like, that says all you need to know.
It's inspiring if I'm being nice.
They made it work. But no, yeah, I completely agree with what you guys are saying. Nobody really knows what the general episode count for TV is anymore since the pandemic. Like the ones that usually got the bigger end on the CW were Walker and The Flash, but they're no longer 22. They're 13 now, or sorry, 18. And meanwhile, the smaller shows have 13. And then you have a show like Superman and Lois, which has been sliced and diced to within an inch of its life, now has 10. Will the rest of the shows that come back now have to have 10 for other reasons because of the delays of the strike? Will the seasons end up getting cut even shorter? Or like we praise Netflix for doing these 6 to 8 episode seasons. Or are we going to start seeing that happen on network TV because they just won't have the time to do complete seasons? Because like that works with shows like Superman and Lois and Walker that tell overall stories. But in a show like something like 911 Lone Star that is on the bigger episode count on Fox, would it benefit from 6 episodes? I mean, like you and me, Reed, definitely agree that it absolutely was, right?
6 episode season. What? I don't even want to know what they would do with that.
6-hour movie.
Yeah, no time for Rob Lowe filler in there. But it's going to be interesting to see how procedurals in particular would navigate those waters. I know the CW doesn't really have any of these, but I think it just highlights how kind of unprecedented the times are. We're still in uncharted waters 3 years later since the pandemic. We're still living through history.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, now that you brought that up, like all of the life cycles that Grey's Anatomy has lived through, they were here at the first strike.
Yeah.
Through COVID. The second strikes.
Still going.
Amazing. Still going.
Like, yeah, they've weathered so many storms episode count wise. That's crazy. Good for them. Anyway. Sorry, that was a intrusive thought.
It's fine. Well, because I have one too, which is I'm all specific to CW, but if you could walk down the street to CBS and talk to whoever you need to talk to get a note to the FBI people, 15 episodes, season 6, please. The best season is season 3, and it has 15 episodes. I feel like we can just be tight right there. We don't have to wait or no 18, no 20. They're not going to get 20 unless they're pushing them into the summer. But 15 episodes is nice. Let's do that. Let's go back to what worked in season 3. And for the love of goodness, let Maggie and OA have episodes together.
And you know who popularized, the person who popularized, I want to say, and maybe I don't know, I'm going to continue to speak in hyperbole. Viola Davis, when she signed on for How to Get Away with Murder, she was like, I'm doing 15, that's it. And I was like, yeah, you better. And she was right. And I feel like not many people are following that blueprint. But I'm like, when has Viola ever been wrong? She probably has, but like she hasn't at the same time. Yeah, hyperbole.
But like Grant did the same thing with the Flash season 9. I think he wanted to sign on for no more than 15 because they were doing 18 at the time. Of course, the CW insisted it could be 13 and no more. But I think that just highlights the kind of uncertainty when it comes to episode counts these days. CW ain't going to go above 13, but at this stage, I'm not sure we're going to get 13 for any of those shows.
Because the acquisitions are 8 episodes to 10 episodes, correct?
I
So
believe so.
they might try to do that formula. I think Fight to Survive, Survive to Fight, whatever the name of
We're
the
fighting and we're
reality.
surviving.
Yes, that's what we're doing. The one where they give money for it. That's airing tonight, I believe. And so I think that's like 8 episodes. It's 8 or 10. But my problem with the 8 to 10 range though is that means you have to keep acquiring or making more content more often. And we already live in an age of peak TV. I cannot tune in to that much television. Why don't we just have things that run through the year that are a good 13 to 15 episodes?
Keep
One
it
goes
tight.
off, another goes on. Like can you imagine how many do 8 to 10? That's probably like 4 shows on that slot. 5 shows that slot in a year.
Sometimes 8 to 10 is just not enough. And they're starting to do that. I think it's the biggest disservice that the 8 to 10 episode count it's comedy really suffers. We're gonna get a tangent. It's happening naturally, everybody. Get on board. The Netflix series Blockbuster, which I was the only one championing this show, had I think it was 8 episodes. That is not whether it was 8 or 10, it was just not enough to launch that kind of comedy, especially streaming, especially workplace. Like it just what, and I know a lot of like The Office, the first season was like 5, 6 episodes. Seinfeld had like 4 or 5 episodes in his first season, or maybe 8, I don't know. And obviously those became huge phenomenons, but like in this day and age, like we like to spend a little bit more time, especially in comedy. That's crazy to have 4 hours and that's your season of a comedy. It's just not enough to like, especially when you a workplace comedy where like the center of it is the were they or won't they romance. Like you just don't have enough time by the end of the 4th hour of the show to be like, I need these 2 characters to get together. You just don't care at that point. So like in that vein, I think 8 to 10 is a huge disservice to comedy.
Yeah. No, I know we always think less is more, but you're absolutely right. I think comedy is the one thing that could benefit from more episodes in general. It's interesting that you brought up The Office because I think early on in its run it was trying to mirror the UK one, and UK comedies usually only are between like 6 episodes or so. And
It
that's
might have been mid-season. That's why it was short, but either
Mm.
way.
Yeah, but I feel like over in the UK, that's kind of acceptable. Whereas I think in the thing the US did so well was these multi-episode comedies. You have things from different generations, like Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, that just went on for episodes upon episodes, and you could just tune in and tune out. Nowhere are you going to get that kind of vibe from an 8-episode show on a streaming service. Absolutely not. And like you and me, Reed, were talking about Melissa and Joey the other day. How many episodes was in his 3rd season? 37.
Oh yeah, it was like 30. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that gives something life to grow. And everyone thinks comedies on television are on the way out, and it's hard to argue with that when the next generation is streaming and it's only 8 high quality episodes, and you're like, you can't build an audience off that. Comedies are supposed to last long. They're supposed to be frustrating. They're supposed to be ridiculous. I don't feel like that's anywhere near enough to build up
It
that
forces
kind of
them
vibe.
to like have to, from the minute the person turns the episode on, the audience, they have to be invested, especially in streaming. Like, because people aren't going to invest their time week to week like they would with The Office to be like, oh, what's the show all about? Like, it forces the show to be by like the 2nd, 3rd episode, it has to be in its groove. Like, there's no like, slowly trying to find your tone or anything. And it can be different with drama because you can like plot out a story, but I don't know. Anyway, end of tangent. This isn't even what we were talking about.
It wasn't, but it's true though. So everyone is aware though, we're talking about traditional comedy, not streaming does typically dramedy. So it's like, oh, but The Bear does well. Like, yeah, but The Bear is more drama than it is comedy. It just happens to be funny. But
Yeah.
that's not what Reed and Michael are talking about. Think How I Met Your Father, if you're thinking about streaming, which they added episodes because they knew that it
They
needed to
doubled
flesh out.
Yeah, they doubled the season 2 episode count, and it worked so well.
Yeah, because comedy needs more episodes because it's half hour typically, and then because it just grows differently from drama. Drama, you're like in it, like it's a trauma bond a lot of the time with them. So you're like immediately there with them because you've just seen them hit the ground. You're like, oh my God, I'm gonna lift you up too. We're gonna be on this journey together. Comedy doesn't have that. So you need to be with them more, to love them more.
It's such a tougher sell too. I think expectations are so much higher with comedy. I don't know, just in my own life, even at work, like comedy is one of my favorite genres, and I feel like I'm the outlier. It's so like the thing that what I think mainstream audiences now, what they connect with is also we just have fewer comedies on the air because they're not as popular as they were, I guess, 90s, 2000s. So there aren't as many. So it's harder to get one to hit, and it's harder to get a lot of people to be on board to try all the different ones. I don't know if that connected to what we said before, but yeah, officially let's end the tangent because I could go on forever.
Yeah.
Episode counts are evolving. That's what we were getting.
Yes, yes.
I think that's the point.
But we're in a new, it'll be interesting. I guess we'll be in a new era come 2024 as well, as the networks figure out what they're going to do to fill their lineups. If they're still not, if they still don't have their heavy hitters, their tent poles ready to go. Speaking of a heavy hitter, though, moving into Nancy Drew, which, you know, if you haven't been sitting down, you've been standing up and listening to us, grab a chair, because this review is going to feel a lot like our reviews of The Flash season 9. And I can't say I'm sorry about that because it's really just how we feel. This was a messy episode. And not in a like fun way. It was like, was this when y'all got the call? The show was canceled type of way. That's what's going on with this review. Michael, how about you start? Since I feel like I'm going to be here and you might at least be here.
Wait, can I quickly preface that I did not watch the episode because I was busy. I do plan on watching it, but I wanted to hear. We did an out of context one in episode season 3. So I was like, let's do this again. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this episode.
Reed, get in the car. Let's go on a journey because
I'm buckled up.
This is going to be something. Yeah. I honestly don't know where to begin with this because feel like we have so many swirling thoughts about every arc that played out in the episode. Of course, we could maybe start with the main one, which is Nancy being kidnapped by the glasses and the Sin Eater sacrifice that could hopefully save Tristan's life. But my biggest problem with the episode, we're trying to save Tristan's life. This man is dying, but he also... Well, I mean, that's the plot of the episode. He's going to die if no one saves Nancy, or if no one saves him. Nancy's obviously the sacrifice that's supposed to save him. Our guy wasn't even in the episode. Now, how do you take that seriously?
What?
No.
Yeah, he wasn't there.
No.
How do they explain that? Weren't they kidnapped together?
His parents said that he was off. They had him recuperating, like from what was happening, and it's like, sure, okay. Fine. And we just go on with the rest of the episode as Nancy's like, in fact, the previous episode ended and you think you're going to get an episode where like maybe her dads are going to spend the whole thing looking for her, or maybe Tristan and her are going to work together to try to convince his parents not to sacrifice her. I mean, because they did spend the previous episode going, we're soulmates, yay. Like, and that didn't happen. In fact, Michael, how did you feel about the fact that we really got out of that plot fast? Like Ryan saves her and that's it. Like, as far as what, I mean, she still almost gets sacrificed, but it just, as far as the rescuing part, we did that quickly.
Very quickly. At first you were like, oh wait, because Nancy asked one of Nancy's final requests was that she asked Mr. Glass, don't know that man's name. She asked Mr. Glass if she could see what the sin that she was supposed to have washed away is, and he used whatever artifact it was, and she started seeing it and she saw fire, but it was instantly interrupted because Ryan showed up like Batman, burst through the door, threw a smoke pellet, broke this man's arm and grabbed Nancy and pulled her out of there. And I was like, this has been 30 seconds. I have no idea what to feel about this. It just came so quickly.
It happened in the beginning of the episode?
So, yeah, right. I think it was the first scene, wasn't it? Nancy came too. She asked for this request. Shelby left. She knew that the father he was easier to break. So Nancy was like, show me. He went to show her. And then as soon as she saw those flames, Ryan burst in, saved her, pulled her out. Credits hit. And I was like, I have no idea what to feel like this. I was overwhelmed in 30 seconds.
I apologize if this is getting ahead of the episode, but do we know what she was erasing?
Not yet,
but we know what it could mean.
I was so mad about the reveal. Let's just skip ahead a little bit.
Yeah, that's
so Reed, so you remember I think you were saying that the ghost storyline has to connect to whatever it is that Nancy supposedly did. It does connect to whatever Nancy supposedly did. And Ace is involved too somehow. The explanation seems to be that potentially the both of them were either present or responsible for the death of the ghost in the morgue.
Oh no. I hate being right.
Yeah. It doesn't, like, it connects, but it's also, Nancy's like, this is why you're so close to the ghost and why she attached to you in the morgue. Because like but you think that you might have killed her, so she's attached to her murderer?
When?
Is that what we're saying?
Attached how?
Emotionally attached. We went full ghost love story this episode too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I didn't like that because the ghost said, yes, I don't know who I am. I don't remember anything about my life, but I know I've never felt this way about anyone or anything before. I was like, really? You don't know anything about your former life, but you've never felt like this about a person you met maybe knowing Nancy Drew's timeline 4 hours ago. Really. And yes, of course, is getting attached because he's never felt like this about anyone since Nancy. Like, dude, chill, it's been like 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 day, who knows with this timeline. Yeah, they didn't have enough time to make that feasible, in my opinion.
Wait. So, no, okay, continue.
So, like, the chemistry is really doing the heavy lifting.
Very much so.
Between Alex and Kennedy?
No, between Alex and the woman who plays the ghost.
Oh, love that.
Yeah, like, it's really, they have great chemistry. It's the only thing that's selling it right now. Like, the dialogue is not doing it for me because he's standing, like, we see her again, but she's usually in the first parts of the episode, she appears blurry in the background, looking like an angel. And he's like talking to her through a radio. It's very much giving Mike and 11 from Stranger Things. And they're just communicating with one another. And he's just like, I just feel like I can just talk to you. It's just so nice to be able to talk to someone. And I'm like, that's great. But y'all are almost giving hopelessly like in love. And you've been talking for 72 hours. Which is just amazing.
I mean, we can't say what putting your arms into a freezing sink of water does to a person.
Well, that's true.
Say.
Oh, but they were able to touch this episode. And very
confusing.
Yeah, well, so after, we should probably talk about the Seder first, because it happens after the Seder, right, Michael?
Yeah.
So Ace's big plot this episode is that he has to lead the Seder. And his father is like, I don't know if he's ready. And he's micromanaging in the background. But Ace is like, I can do it. So Ace spends a good part of the episode speaking with Miss Ghost and explaining to her about the Seder and what it's why it's important and the things that he has to do. And then they all sit to have the Seder with Nancy not invited, interesting enough. And he's leading it and whatnot, but Nancy spent her time, she stole his ID because she needs to talk to the ghost because she believes that she's responsible for the ghost's death. So while he's trying to lead the dinner and lead everyone through the questions and the portions of the Seder.
In the claw, by the way. In the claw of all places.
Yes. Because that's according to Ace's mom, that's his house. And as the head of that, since he's the head of the claw, since that's his house, we were really stretching. I was like, what set do we not have?
Yeah, they were like, we didn't have the money to keep Ace's house set. We had Nancy's house and we can never remember the name of her castle.
Oh, Icarus Hall.
Icarus Hall. God, I almost said I don't know what I almost said. And the claw. They're like, we have 3 sets. Yeah, I love when final seasons do this though, because it's so funny when they're like getting married somewhere random and it's like, oh, you just didn't want to do it, you couldn't afford outside and you were trying not to be photographed. Oh my god, I love TV so much. It's so fun. Okay, continue.
Especially when you can see it. And you're probably right, because like Carson was there and Bess and George were there, everybody was there, but Nancy wasn't. Jean was there as well, Miss Jean. They literally had every single person there attending at the claw, even though the claw didn't mean anything to these people. So yeah, but of course Nancy didn't get an invite because plot.
Yes.
They've got to be losing money at the claw though, because like the amount of times that they just close it for supernatural shenanigans and whenever they want is like they gotta be in the red.
You would think, but so they're doing the Seder, and it's lovely. It truly, like, we have
favorite scene of the episode, yeah.
Yeah, and everyone is being respectful, and they're sitting and they're listening, and they're learning as Ace leads them through the dinner, and then in comes Nancy like a whirlwind because she's figured out how she needs to do whatever. She's gonna call the ghost because the ghost came with Ace to the claw because apparently she's not attached to the morgue anymore for reasons. It's and as she's doing this, the ghost freaks out. And suddenly we have like a storm, like a gale force winds going through the Seder. And Reed, when you said you loved it, this was peak comedy. Ace's mom is like, is it me or is there a breeze? And her hair is like blowing over her face. Like, man, it's more than a breeze. And then the power goes out and everything is still blowing. And he's like, I don't know what's happening. It's like clearly supernatural things are happening.
Yeah. And they're all like shouting at each other. Yes, I think you're making it worse. And you're like, it's these people think it's a breeze. They really turned a really tasteful, nice scene into like comedy. And I don't know whether it was successful for the right reason. Don't get me wrong. We were laughing at it, but we were like, come on now. Because Ace suggested it might have been a fan at the back. So when Ace went out and it got worse, they're like, Ace, I think you're making it worse. Like, you really thought this was a breeze of all things. Like, people are blowing around the dining room, everything's falling off. Carson and Jean are having an argument and shouting at each other, and mess.
It's just a mess. And they were supposed to be on Moses. That is where we were at, because his mom was like, I guess they were at the soup portion of the Seder, and she asked George, but no, she asked Bess, do they have better bowls? And so he was really trying to tell the story. It's about the parting of the Red Sea, I believe. And then in comes like all of this. And so you get a Nace argument because he realizes that that's Nancy in the back messing with his ghost girlfriend. And he's like, leave her alone. And then she's like, I have to solve the mystery. So he's like, if you do that, then she passes on. And I don't want her to do that because this is the most I've felt since Us. And I was like, what?
We're doing it again.
We're doing it again. I was like, it just, as like, y'all are at a place where you're arguing with your pseudo ex about your current flame who's dead. Like, not even like undead. She's
minor
just
detail.
not here.
Did they resolve that? Did they help her pass on?
Not yet. That's what the episode ends with, her coming to see Ace to let him know, like, we have to, I think we're responsible. I think that's why she's connected to you. I think we're tied to it because the timestamp on her picture down at the senator's mirror is 20 minutes after she got off the phone with Ace. And she thinks Ace might have been with her. If you remember that episode, she was standing in front of her mystery board. So she must have figured something out and might have called him again so they could both go investigating, because then that episode they had investigated together anyway. So I don't know. The ties are there, but they're loose. They're not tight. So I don't know how that's going to work. But I do know that people are excited to see Nancy and Ace investigate again. That's what all the tweets were last night. I'm trying to see how this story, like, how did y'all end up killing somebody?
I feel like just based on like emotional stakes, it feels like, and of course I haven't seen the episode, but it feels like this Ace plot could have happened sooner.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would have carried far more weight and had more legs if it did. We wouldn't have been sitting watching it. Like, no, as Sabrina said, Ace and the ghost, great chemistry, super cute, but you're sitting watching their scenes almost like on a clock, thinking there's 2 episodes left. Why are we doing this now? And it would have been far much more fulfilling to watch it earlier. It's the same the way they've only really pulled the trigger on Nancy and Tristan now, and yet we were completely on board with this early on because a distraction's fun. We like a distraction every now and again, and yet they waited until the last 5 episodes to really make it go. So it feels like everything's kind of falling apart a little bit because they ran them all together, and now they've literally nothing's been resolved. We've 2 episodes left. Everything's up in the air. Nancy and Ace think they've killed someone and used the sin eater to wash away their sins before they figured out it was actually Tristan. So of course the fans were right. Their 2 other halves, their new flames, are now tied into their overall arc. But like, where do we go from here? We have 2 episodes left.
I know. And so when you have that great moment between Ace and the ghost where she materializes and he's like, how can you do that? And she's like, I think because of the power of, was she inferring that's the power of their connection to one another?
I think so.
Okay, because
Can everyone see her? Not to interrupt. I just forgot to ask that before.
No. Yeah, she wasn't talking to Bess, right? In the previous episode. Like Bess was like, I can't get in. She couldn't hear her. Things were just moving, but she couldn't hear her.
Yeah, and then in this episode, she was going to start appearing to us, and the minute was it Bess or Nancy walked in, she disappeared. So either I'm not. Maybe the other people would be able to see her if she showed herself, but it seems to be that she doesn't want anyone to see her other than us, or it's just the power of her connection means that he can see her and nobody else can.
But they can touch now, Reed. And it was, I thought the beat was too long. We were there for a while with this finger touch, but they were finger touching, and they're like,
they touched fingers.
Yeah, it was giving
just like ET.
Yeah.
And then it slowly went into the hands, and there was like a moment where they just like stood and looked, and then we cut away.
I know, Nancy and Ace fans, I'm sorry. Like, I know that's got to be brutal. They had the candlelight scene with Nancy and Tristan last episode. Now they got, it's rough. Sorry about that.
Oh, even rougher. I forgot. So you remember in the opening, in the text messages from the premiere, I think he wanted to invite Nancy to say this Seder, and he had said he'd always wanted to bring a date. He didn't invite Nancy to the Seder. He invited the ghost as his date. No one else knows she's there but Bess. But like, he was like, do you want to go? Like, and then she does. She just hangs out in the freezer with him as he's preparing for the thing. She just follows him all over the claw. Wherever he is, she is. And I'm just like, I know that hurt. Like, for shippers, because you would think this would have been the episode that he would have been like, I'd always wanted you to come. Are you going to come? I know we're not together. But that's not what he did. He didn't invite her at all. And Carson felt weird about it. Carson's like, oh, I thought, she was invited.
Yeah, why is Carson there and Nancy's not?
Because Ace's parents invited him and Jean.
Interesting.
I feel like, Sabrina, should we talk then about Carson and Jean then? Is that a good point to bring that up?
Oh, no.
It is.
Oh, no.
Okay, so what cliche read could they have possibly given these two if you think about TV?
Is she pregnant?
Got it, Mom.
Yeah.
No. Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
I need to lie down.
Yes. So Nancy goes to track down was it EMT, Michael? Or who had been with the ghost. Not the ghost when she was alive, but like it was
I can't believe it. I'm sorry. Okay, I had to get that out.
Yeah, well, she went to a hospital in Trenton, and lo and behold, Jean was there, and Nancy was like, "Why are you here?" She's like, "Bunions. I have a bunion." And she's like, Trenton has like the best podiatrist in wherever, and it was really awkward. And then Nancy looked at the sign, and where Jean came from is not where the podiatrist is, but she didn't ask any questions.
I know. Why does anybody try lying to Nancy Drew's face? Like, what have we learned in a year?
Yeah, right. And so Carson was like, well, this morning I don't remember seeing anything on her foot, but okay. When Nancy was talking to him, because she didn't know her dad didn't know that she went to go check her bunions. So at the Seder, Carson, just being the loveliest boyfriend, was like, you can slip your shoes off, right? They say that at a Seder you're supposed to be comfortable, and I know you have the bunion. So just slip your shoe off and be comfortable. She's like, what are you talking about?
See, I don't want to take my shoes off. I'm fine.
I know. So then they're just arguing, and then she yells, I'm pregnant. But like by the time she does, the wind has died down. So everyone heard it. Even Nancy.
And at that point, Nancy had already known though, right? Or she just suspected?
I don't know what she suspected. I mean, it's either life-threatening illness or pregnancy. You only got two options there.
Yeah, there was kind of that awkward moment where after Jean, I thought Jean was a little mean to Carson because he kept going on about the bunions. I was like, yes, but you started this lie. That sweet man only wanted her to be so comfortable. My feet are fine. Leave my feet alone. Leave me alone. And then because she shouted, I'm pregnant at him just as the wind died down and everyone heard it, she stormed out. And I mean, I understand that she didn't want to announce that in front of everyone, but like, it's not Carson's fault. Bless him. All he wanted to do was make sure you were fine and comfortable. And then Nancy had that awkward moment where she walked in and was like, I'm guessing it's not bunions. It's like, okay, did you not hear that?
More like bun in the oven. Sorry,
Right.
that was a bad dad joke.
But like, and so then they have an awkward conversation where like Carson and Jean are discussing this pregnancy, and he's like, well, I know it's your decision. She's like, yeah, I know that, but like, I want to factor how you feel in too, because you raised Nancy. She's like grown, like you have all this freedom, and now you wouldn't. And I was like, and then she said something about, it seemed like she was very stuck on the freedom part. And I was like, Jean, what are you trying to say? Are you saying you don't want this pregnancy, but you haven't gotten there yet? Are you saying you do want the pregnancy, and you want Carson to be there, but you're not sure if Carson is going to be? I mean, both of you are on a relationship though, and he's not the type of dude to be like, I'm not going to be involved. So I don't. With 2 episodes left, I'm like, why did we get this in? Because now I'm like, what are we doing?
I'm more concerned with how Nancy would feel, because that has to be troubling that her adoptive father is having a biological child.
Right. Possible if she's gotten there, but there's also the big age gap. Then the fact that like her mom and her wouldn't have a tie to this baby. How does she feel about her dad having another kid with another woman? This was his first outing into the dating world.
Between that and everything else, there's a lot to cover in 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll just surprise us and be like, cool, a sibling, fun.
And we don't even know if she knows now, because she did make that awkward joke when she came out and everyone did hear it. But did Nancy hear it? Did Nancy not hear it? We never followed up on that, because Nancy was so worried about her own life, because the glasses had planted like a paralytic in her spine, that if she didn't turn up to the place where they wanted her to sacrifice Tristan, she would be paralyzed and then die.
Good Lord.
So she was trying to figure this out. I guess we should get back to the main plot before we wrap up.
Oh no, don't bamboozle me again.
She had to turn. Didn't like this. Tristan texted her being like, got away from my folks, meet me. And she was like, Tristan. Ran out to meet him. I was like, come on now.
She knows it could possibly be Tristan, girl.
Yeah, of course. Because the text said meet me, she instantly thought of the seashell that said meet me, which, remember, the glasses spotted the other day. So of course they knew or manipulated her using those words. She ran out and was like, Tristan, and then Shelby came out of nowhere and she was like, no, please. And Shelby activated the paralytic. She was down, she could not move. So then they like tied her to like some kind of ritualistic sacrifice board in the ground, in that little spot of the woods that everybody literally is in whenever they want to do a storyline in the woods. Meanwhile, Bess tried to break into the Historical Society to get, a device that would repel the Sin Eater. And that horrible woman, Callie, who now runs the Historical Society, was going to call the police. But long story short, Reed, remember the cabin in the woods that was taking the photos of the people who washed away their sins? It turns out that was Callie's family who owned the cabin, and she was using that as a bit of a side hustle to blackmail the people who had washed away their sins, to extort them for some money. Ryan discovered this. So basically, when she tried to call the police on Bess, they came to an understanding that it turns out that she wants to protect the Sin Eater. Callie wants to protect the Sin Eater so that she can continue to extort people who wash away their sins. So she helped the Drew crew stop the glasses, save Nancy's life by using a device. Yes, the Sin Eater, by the way, showed up doing like an exorcist walk and almost took a big chunk out of Nancy's neck. But right as that happened, Callie showed up with the repellent. It repelled the Sin Eater away. Everybody's saved. They all live happily ever after. No, not really. But now Shelby is like, not Shelby, what's that woman's name? Callie is like, the Sin Eater's mine. I got rid of the glasses for trying to mess with it. If you try to mess it, your fate will go the same way. So now it turns out the glasses aren't the big bad of the season. Callie's the big bad of the season, even though we thought Callie was a hero in this episode because she saved Nancy's life. It's just, remember what I said earlier on about Whiplash? All this stuff's happening. It looks cool on paper. It all happens in the space of 5 minutes and you're left thinking, I felt nothing about that at all.
Sounds confusing.
Well, it is, but also, so there's that, and then there's like, the glasses aren't even the one, they're sacrificing Nancy but it's Tristan who has to actually kill her, which he doesn't know that because he's been transformed. So it's like when his mom went, one day you'll understand, it's like one day he's going to understand that in order to save him, you made him kill the girl he likes. That's the thing that he's gonna understand one day. Like we went full on toxic parent. Like I just don't. And then with Callie, I felt like the reveal that she actually does believe in the supernatural and is she's suddenly all about money because the Historical Society is now a gift shop where she's selling keychains and postcards. And you remember how she stood up in front of everybody and she was just like, these things need to be under lock and key. Like Bess is like putting the kids in danger. George's sister and George's sister's girlfriend are just stealing these books from a bookcase. That's just, there's no lock or anything. She can actually see them from the cash register, doesn't care at all. So I was like, so it's not about public safety. You just wanted the Historical Society so you could sell your wares out of an official building in town. But we didn't have time to stop to talk about that because a lot was happening in the episode. So I'm like, when did it become about commerce? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Just like, what? Okay. Enjoy whatever money you're going to make off of postcards and keychains.
But like, that's what, she's just a hustler. She don't care about what's going on in the town as far as the parents who don't believe in supernatural or think it's too dangerous for her to be around. She just wants money. And that was a major flip that came out of nowhere.
Yeah. So as far as she's concerned, she can control the supernatural and she doesn't want Bess saving people from it. She doesn't want them exposing it. She thinks the supernatural can be used fine if it's under her control. So now she basically has not control of the Sin Eater, but she won't let anyone save Tristan. So I feel like, is she the big bad we're going forward? Is she really even that big of a bad? Because like Bess could just twinkle her out of existence and nobody would shed a tear. Where are we going? There's 2 episodes left.
It's just weird. This whole episode was just weird. There's a lot going on. To wrap up things, I feel like it made more of a mess. George and Nick were arguing all episode too about how the girls were getting the items that Bess needed. He was very much in the vein of they shouldn't be stealing. And granted, I enjoyed the dad thing of it all. There's this great moment, Reed, where he catches the girls and he's like outside now, and he knows one of the youngest ones is on the step because he calls her name and then she comes down the step and he's like, you two, we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna talk about this. He's very much a dad, and he even talks to that same one about like why he's arguing with George, because the Judge Abbott wants to sacrifice himself for Nancy because now that he knows about everything that he did, he feels really guilty and hasn't been able to settle, and George wasn't taking his call, so he offered to present a sin to the mirror so that the Sin Eater would come after him instead of Nancy. And George was like, solid idea, let's do it. And Nick was like, it's not a life for a life. We're not doing that. She's like, well, the man wants to. I didn't suggest it to him. He's like, but if you don't stop him from doing it, then you're just as bad. And she called him Moses because that's where they were in the Seder at the time. And then her sister comes over and she explains that Moses led the people. He stood by his principles and he did the thing. And shouldn't you do that? Shouldn't you like see where George is coming from, but also find another way? And he was like, yeah. And the entire time I was like, all that is true. That's young Moses. Older Moses did not make it to the promised land, which is not the point of the story. But I was, I did sit there like, yeah, but Moses didn't make it to the promised land though. He did eventually disobey. That was like the whole thing. That was the lesson after he did everything. Let me not go right into Bible study. Let me just move on past that because that's not where we are. But I did have to pause and be like, that's not, okay, fine. I guess we'll go with set my people free. Let my people go, Moses.
I feel like maybe I'm on Georgia's side. I'm like, let's wrap this up.
I kind of was too. Like, I thought what she just wanted was for Judge Abbott to be a distraction. Not that she was willing to let this man die, just that they could take the heat off of Nancy and figure out what they're going to do. And I get why they had Nick do what he did, but it's also like, couldn't he have just provided another way? Because there's also a subplot of them not seeing eye to eye because he was going on a road trip with Jade and George felt
There's
bad
a lot
about
happening. My goodness.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe we just leave Nick out of the loop sometimes. We stop running things past him.
They tried, but the girls can't lie. Like the girls are very fishy in front of him, and he's like, "I know my kids are doing something illegal. I'm gonna find out what it is."
Yeah, and I saw the whole George and Nick conflict coming from a mile off because she said early on about something about redemption. Some people aren't worthy of redemption, and Nick's face just dropped. Tell me you don't really believe that. And so he's like, okay, they're going to butt heads over this. Of course, Judge Abbott comes in, wants to sacrifice himself. It gives him the perfect thing to catalyst for that conflict, and it all blows up. George did make a good point because Nick was like, you're letting this man sacrifice himself. You're taking away his chance of redemption. And George was like, yes, but if I talked him out of it, I would then be choosing him over Nancy, which is the exact same thing. It's not my decision. I shouldn't be put in the decision where I have to choose one life over another. So George chose inaction over action. And I'm like, none of this conversation's right. None of these people are in the right. But yeah, it's very philosophical for a subplot of an episode that was all about subplots. Yeah.
I don't know. Is it bad that I would have been like, go ahead, Abbott?
Obviously, in the end, he didn't have to sacrifice himself.
Yeah, well, and also I think that like the point was for Nick to see George's side of things. That he was being too stringent. Like, he's our noble hero, but sir, sometimes
I know I love that about him, but I'm like, sometimes we got to meet some people at their level.
Mm-hmm. And he really felt taken to task because she reminded him that Judge Abbott assaulted somebody.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't. So he covered up an assault. So she's like, you're not a good dude. I don't feel bad. Peace. Like, that was her.
It was like, it's like in, I don't want to spoil Outer Banks for everybody, but it reminds me of a certain somebody who sacrificed themselves to save everybody. It was like, thank you. We still hate you, but thank you.
Oh, I feel like that's an excellent segue into Heartstopper.
Yes, let's lighten it up.
Yes. So, like, just to wrap Nancy Drew up real quick, we didn't really like the episode, y'all, but if y'all enjoyed it, we're happy for you. We got 2 more episodes left. Hopefully the penultimate episode gives in the finale makes us cry.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers. We're hoping. We're reaching.
Fingers crossed. I'll let everybody know what I thought next week.
But moving into Heartstopper, we are very excited to be doing a review of season 2. We did a review of season 1, and it's just like the loveliest show. To me, it's the best young adult coming of age series out right now. Like, I just really think so. The others are not on that level. And I mean, that's okay. We can have mid-tier teen shows, but like Heartstopper just really gives you what you want from a YA coming of age drama that is also educational as far as like emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I don't know how they balance this and pull it off so well because, like you said, it is educational in the sense that everything that happens is so important, that what's written is so important, but it doesn't come off like Sunday school special, like we're here to teach. It doesn't feel preachy. Mm-hmm. It just feels honest and real in a way that I don't think has been presented in coming of age stories, at least not in the last few years, where the best way that I can explain it is just no matter who you are, you can find a place to be seen. And I think that's why it hits for so many people is like, and it isn't even like, it just pummels you. It like tackles you with just like emotion and happiness, maybe even some bitter sweetness in there, just because all of the characters, there's an entryway for somebody to feel seen in a way that they probably hadn't been seen before in a teen show.
So earnest and, like you said, honest and endearing. And I think that's the important thing because it's a lovely show and it's a really lighthearted and fun show, but it's also so important in what it does. And I think the whole lighthearted element of it is what makes it like that. It's such a positive inspiration and beacon of hope for a lot of people, a lot of young people, a lot of young queer people at the moment. And I think you see online so many people saying that they never had shows like that growing up. And I think that's why this stands apart as something. So the story is so simple in the best kind of way, but it's real and it's endearing. We in our line of work, we pick a lot of TV shows up and put them down and have to quickly move on to the next one and the next one. And it's been like 2 weeks since I've watched this, and it's stayed at the forefront of my mind since then. And I remember the exact same thing happened with season one, and when we were all raving about it in our season one review. And I just love the fact that a year on, a season on, 8 more episodes on it, we can still say all the exact same things we said last season, but take it to the next level. It's rare that you get a show that's every bit as good, if not better, in its second season. And this nailed that. It's just it's beautiful. It's a lovely TV show. I'm used to British teen dramas. There's a lot of them on in the UK, but like never has one been so enthusiastic and endearing as this. And I think that's what sets it apart from all the rest, not just in the UK, but in the rest of the world. And we need more programs like that.
And we need like middle of growing up shows, like, because they are very, I'm a big champion of teen content that skews a little younger, because like the babies need it. Like they need content. Like for me, Heartstopper is, at least if I'm talking just about Netflix shows, it's like they're with people who might have aged out a little of the Babysitter's Club, or did enjoy Julie and the Phantoms. Like it's just a road to being able to see kids like yourself, or like kids like and get the lessons you need to learn without it being like, and I'm just only saying this because I love Degrassi, but it was very public service announcement, like drama all the time.
Tackle the issues.
Yes. And like Heartstopper does tackle the issues, but it does so in a way that feels very safe, very familiar. Like we're not going to spoil what happens in the season, but I feel like we can talk about some plot elements. Like for instance, Charlie has his first boyfriend and he is not doing his coursework. Like that is relatable for a lot of kids. It's their first outing into dating. They're deeply in with the person who likes them back. They don't really want to concentrate on their schoolwork because at this point their schoolwork is boring. Like why would I do that when I could go run out in the park with Nick, with my dog, like with his dog? Why would I do that when we could like hang out together, listen to music? And on the opposite side of that, this is Nick's, I'm assuming, his first relationship or his first serious relationship, and he's getting his schoolwork done. That's also relatable. Like there's just something about this show where all the characters are going through something a little bit different, but it's age appropriate. And it very much lives in the pocket of like stakes. The stakes are high for them, even if it's low stakes as a whole series. And I think that's good. I think we need content where it's low stakes but important, and it's about being able to come into your own and being able to discover who you are and express that and be able to share that and be able to communicate it, and also recognizing that it can be scary, and that you need support. This whole show is supportive.
I love that it's character driven. In that vein. It's not driven by plot. And I know this is one thing that we talked about in the season 2 finale, that one of the last shots we were like, oh no, is something bad gonna happen? Is something like gonna happen? And that was like our usual teen drama brain, or like the brain that watches too much TV, too many like, we got to get the sweeps week like headline in there. But quickly I was like, this is not that show. It has never been that show. They're not going to take the quick like, oh, something bad's going to happen to this character just for the sake of plot. And that's something I really respect, that it's such a simple show, and sometimes simple can have a negative connotation. If you call somebody simple, it means they're not smart or something. But I think simplicity can be beautiful. And it's really in the details of what Alice writes in the show with these characters. There's so much care taken with each of them and each of the pairings. Even in season 2, we got to see like like you were saying, like season 2 is better than the first, and that's not to put down the first season. It's just the way that it expanded on what worked, expanded the universe. It it just felt, I don't know, it was the way that I've never seen the second season really say what sophomore slump. Like we're staying true to ourselves and we're going to build upon it. Like we saw so many other perspectives, like Isaac and the teachers. Like we get a perspective of somebody who's older, who's reflecting on their experience as a queer person coming out later in life. Like I don't think that's a story that gets told either, because there are so many older people, including us and older people, watching the show and feeling something about it, because for a lot of us it's fantasy. Like I know in my experience, I was a Charlie, I didn't have a Nick in high school, so being able to watch this, there's like a sense of mourning and experience that I didn't have, but also feeling this, I can relate to Mr. Farouk, who's watching these boys run around this hotel and being blissful and happy, but feeling like resentful, but then realizing that like every not even just queer people, everybody's on their own journey, no timing is correct. And I think that's one of the biggest messages that I got from season 2. Each character is on their own journey of like coming into their own. Like it's not just Nick grappling with coming out, it's each person trying to figure out the timing and realizing like, oh, one thing's not better than the other. And the subtlety that Alice wrote that in this season, like in awe. Like they're not hitting us over the head with it at all. It's just like subliminal and you can pick up on it. And I think that's another reason why 5 to 50 the show will hit. Like you'll find something, it'll make you feel, full stop. It'll make you feel anything. And it's necessary, especially constantly saying it in this world. Like you just need an entry, even when it gets a little bit darker and it touches on those realities, those hard truths. It's done so in a way where the characters have room to express those feelings. And I keep bringing up this book that I'm reading about teen dramas, and I'm sure Sabrina and Michael are tired of me, even though you guys said you weren't. But I'm in the middle of the Dawson's Creek chapter. And do you guys remember that headline I shared with you where someone said, a teen show I will not name is the best teen drama since Dawson's Creek? Not going to get into that discourse, but I will say, I think there is a Venn diagram between Heartstopper and Dawson's Creek, in the sense that in this book, Kevin Williamson, who created Dawson's Creek, said that his vision for Dawson's Creek was to create a show about teenagers who could articulate themselves in the way they wish they could. Because like when you're a teenager, you have big feelings, but you can't always like communicate those in a way that you want to. Like you just feel things, but you don't have the language to express it. So in that show, these kids talk with heightened language. They have SAT vocabulary. They're very emotionally intelligent, even when they're not. Like they can express themselves. And I think the show does the same thing. It's like same but different. Like these characters are so honest and open, even when they're not. Like they get to a place where they can communicate in a way that I think teenagers should. And I think that's beautiful too. Like there's space for that kind of vision that's not like, I don't know how many people could relate to Dawson's Creek in like in the sense of like the language that they used. It was very like, I think it was just heightened, but when you watch this, it's like so similar, but not, I don't want to say like watered down or anyway. It's just so realistic, even more so than any other like teen drama that was free of any genre elements. Like I'm rambling, but I had to get all that out.
You hit so many nails on so many heads there. Yeah, I can't argue with any of that. I feel like this show, it takes the best. British drama is used to telling realistic stories, but a lot of them can be traumatic or disheartening. I think this has taken the best of that and the best of what we love about teen dramas and created the perfect blend of such an uplifting story of what life should be like for young people in love, irrespective of who they love. And I feel like what you mentioned is so on point. There's not an awful lot of movement on the show. Like we even look at season 2 taking place a day after season 1. There's not an awful lot of movement, but there's so much emotional movement. Yeah, I believe it's the next day. I believe, yeah. Um, uh, which I mean, if you've been watching your Nancy Drew conversations, that can be frustrating when they pack too much into it. What I love about Heartstopper is that it never feels like there's too much packed into it. And I say that after a season that managed to expand on the story, expand on the cast, and make it more of an ensemble piece. It just feels like everything that happens is so important to the characters. They feel it, and thus we feel it. It's a character-driven story, like Reed said. In that, yeah, of course, the biggest thing that happened this season was that they went to Paris, and compared to season 1, that's kind of huge. But generally, the stakes, like Sabrina said, are lower, but they're so much higher to the characters because it's a more realistic story. It's a more relatable story, and because it's happening to them, and we care about them, we care about the story, and we, as you both said, we can feel something from it. We can look back on it as older people and see what it meant to us back then, what it could have been to us, but at the same time, what it could have been to so many people. It's so accessible for people of all ages that anybody can take something from it. And I think that's what's so important. We love these characters and we love these stories, and seeing a little slice of their life in just 8 episodes, it never gets old. I'm even more excited for season 3 now than I was for season 2 after season 1 dropped. Uh, it's just such an no pun intended heartfelt show. Yeah, I couldn't love it more.
They take, just like Dawson's Creek, they take adolescent emotions seriously, where you feel the gravity and the weight of just saying I love you to somebody. Like that's the biggest, like that's the, Sabrina said we're not going to spoil. I'm not listening. That was the big cliffhanger is like the decision to say those 3 words. Like that is huge. And I feel like that used to be in TV of yesteryear, like saying I love you. Like that was like a big moment in shows. And in these days, like we expect a little bit more from plots, but it's crazy that they successfully made the weight of saying I love you like it feels like a life or death thing, because it does when you're young. It does.
They've also done a great job of explaining that communication is hard, regardless of what you're talking about. Like, how do you, even if it's like not a necessarily an emotional thing, like something terrible happened and I'm trying to address it with you, it's just like, how do I form the words to tell you what's going on with me? Or like, especially when I feel like it's burdensome, or I don't want to put more on your plate because I know you're going through a lot. Like, I feel like the way Heartstopper does it, like it is how teens would do it, but it's also like if you are an adult who has struggles with emotional connection or communicating properly, it's also kind of like a roadmap and a guide for you too. Like if you're watching it as an older person, like, dang, do I do that? Am I over here in the corner not saying anything, or I'm telling you I'm fine when I'm not fine, or am I only giving you like a little sprinkling of what's going on in my life? It helps to be like, yeah, everyone's doing that. Like these kids are doing it too, and these kids are struggling to tell each other what's going on home in their life or why they're not doing well in some area of it. Even if it's not, what I liked was the whole season isn't about coming out. It's about, like, it is about that specifically for Nick, but it's also about his comfort and being able to do it on his time, while also recognizing that it's important to Charlie, even if Charlie doesn't says you can take your time. Charlie's saying exactly what he needs to say, but Nick is also reacting to that in the way that he needs to react. Like, considering what happened in Charlie's previous situation with Ben, who we shall not speak on. Well, I shall not speak on Ben. Good luck to Ben in his other endeavors. But it's like being able to recognize some in the group, like Isaac's story is about figuring out where he lands on a spectrum, recognizing, like, being able to feel that out and test it. Like, what's his name? Taos is being like asking out his friend. Like, how she's my best friend. I don't want to mess it up. And then Ella's all about what, like, yes, the Tao situation, but what she wants to do with her life. And what,
And
and like,
allowing herself to be the main character, I feel
yes,
like, of her own life.
and allowing herself to have a life outside of her friend group, who she loves immensely, but who she looks to be growing past, just because she has different interests in them and wants to focus in a different way. So there's just so much going on in this friend group that, like, anyone can connect to, whether it's struggling with the potential loss of a friend, not by death, just by moving, the struggling with sharing your relationship, or being honest about your home life, or in Imogene's case, recognizing that you just like a boy because he likes you, or you think he likes you. Like, that's also a thing. I love that moment when they're asking her about her relationship, and I don't remember who, but is it Elle? She's like, "Do you even like him?"
Yeah.
And like, and that is not only teen, that does happen with adults too, where you're looking at your friend like, all I'm hearing is negativity. I'm not seeing how this benefits you. Do you like this person? Or do you like being in a relationship? Because those are two different things.
And I think that's why the show works so well, because like y'all just said, it's the teenage experience through so many different eyes, so many different perspectives. Not a single thing happens in the show that you're like, that's unfeasible or that's unrealistic. All of these people are really feeling that, and you feel the weight of it on their shoulders. A lot of shows would get bogged down in the overly dramatic stakes going on, that it would rush through stuff like this. Even with just 8 episodes, the show manages to take its time and make you feel all of that. And Nick's storyline is a perfect example of that, because he's constantly told that he doesn't owe people that information about himself, and yet it doesn't change the fact that he feels the weight of the world on his shoulders, and he struggles to say those words. And I think that to me was one of the most meaningful parts of it, because it really stood out. It really felt real. It really felt authentic. And I know there's so many people out there that would have related to that. Every single one of these teenagers is going through something. And even though we've said this about other shows before, it might not be the weight of the world realistically to somebody else, but to them, it's the weight of the world. And because they felt it, you felt it. This might be the most expert example I've ever seen of this done on television. It was just amazing.
I feel like it's just impossible to praise Heartstopper enough. It's like, it's going to go down in TV history as one of the best television shows that has ever been done, not just for kids, just in general. Like, it just truly is a masterpiece, with a romance in the middle of it. Like, it's Nick and Charlie, and I know there are other relationships, but I mean, my goodness, those two.
It's so magical. The chemistry between Kit and Joe is just like, I can't not look at them and just like be like, like, it breaks my heart how cute they are and how much they like that love is. We've watched a lot of romance. We've talked about a lot of romance on this show. I'm struggling to think of a love that is as wholesome and pure and just gorgeous as their love for each other. It is I don't have words for how adorable it is. Just like how much Nick cares about Charlie and how much Charlie likes Charlie thinks that loving Nick is not putting his thoughts, feelings, issues onto Nick, and Nick is like, no, that's what love means, is I want to take off everything that you're carrying. I'm going to carry it too. And it's just like,
it's just beautiful. It makes me misty.
It's so beautiful. I don't know.
They're a model relationship.
Yeah.
Like, they really are. And I'm so happy they exist, because, like, regardless of your orientation, but most importantly for young men who love young men, it's a model for what your relationship should look like. It just is. Like, there's just something about these two where I'm just like, look, if you need to see what love looks like, or what a romance should look like, or what your relationship should look like, I don't care what your gender identity is or what your orientation is. It's those two.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it. That's what it. That they are the example. They are the model. They are the template because it just really is.
The OTP of all OTPs. Is that what that
yeah.
acronym is?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're so lovely. I'm struggling to find a more lovelier pair.
Right?
I know.
Like, I can't, like, the only other one, and just because the movie is coming out this evening and I just watched it last night, Red, White, Royal Blue, Alex and Henry is the other, like, pairing that I'm like, oh my God. It's just the way they love each other. I don't understand how it's real. But Nick and Charlie, I can't, I don't know.
I feel like
Magical.
Magical. They're like what people would want if they're looking for romance. Like if you wanted to find love in high school and expected to have that love go through high school into being life partnership, they would be it.
And I love that it's being modeled for the younger generation. I'm so thrilled that kids have this show because we didn't, right? We didn't have anything. Even like we obviously did not have models of queer love growing up
Mm-hmm.
for our demographic growing up. We just didn't have that. But even the models of love that we did have for younger people, it was so complicated in a different way. Like this is complicated in a realistic way that isn't fully like tragic. Like no one's, being kidnapped. No one's has a stalker. No one is being hit with a car before prom. Like there's no sex scandals. Like it's just so pure, and the complications are such an easy way to enter into this world and to be like, oh yeah, we did go through that in a way, maybe not the same way, but it's the way that it just taps into the human experience is I don't know how Alice did it.
But they did. They like really did. I was trying to think when you were talking about our examples of love. Everything's so freaking dramatic. Like and
even Lizzie and Gordo like couldn't get it together.
Like everything, like it really is. I can't think of outside of no, because even when I go over to anime with
even
Serena
like
and Darian, it's a lot.
Yeah, I'm like, I love Ryan and Marissa. That is the tragicest romance of tragic romances you will ever see on television. And I'm like, Rory Gilmore didn't have a romance that was like this. Like, I can't.
One Tree Hill was a hot mess.
Not even on a
Clark and Lana on Smallville.
Yeah, I'm like
mess.
Even Clark and Lois, just.
I'm sure there's one out there, but I doubt it would rival Nick and Charlie.
No, because even if you were like Troy and Gabriella for High School Musical, those two drama too. Every episode, every movie. I said episode, it's movie.
And a lot of the big teen romances from our era haven't aged well. I feel like this is one that will, and because the idea of love is a timeless thing, it's been in the movie since the 40s, the 30s, whatever. This kind of love, I think, is timeless. Not only is it's timely, it's necessary, it's long overdue, but just how endearing, enthusiastic, lovable it all really is. You can't put a price on that. You can't put a timeline on that. I feel like this is one that will age incredibly well. And I'm so glad that not just this generation, but that future generations will have that to grow up with. And I hope it lives on Netflix forever, where people can just click into it and watch it, because it's one of the most uplifting, joyous, and happy romances I've ever seen on TV. And that's not to say that there isn't trauma in there, but just the way it's all dealt with, the way it's all dramatized, the authenticity of it, and the absolutely endearing nature of it. It's beautiful.
I'm demanding 6 seasons in a movie.
I can get behind that.
I hope so. I feel like it's not going anywhere. It's hugely successful. Alice is doing things that Alice's work to me in this show very much feels like a byproduct of so many of the conversations that have been happening since we were coming of age, like in the ways that the doors have opened, and they've diversified. And there's a great conversation about consent in this season. There's a great conversation about boundaries.
Yeah.
And what it means to apologize, and how apologizing doesn't fix things. You just said some words. Actions are really important, but also the person you're apologizing to doesn't mean you get to come back in their life. I'm just like, look at these like little niblets of like PSA that's not PSA. Like, we're not having
it's not whacking you over the head. It's very suddenly, like, it's just subtle reminders that apologies aren't a transaction. No is a complete sentence. Like, it's just like, that's what's at the bottom of all of these scenes. Like, oh my God, that scene between Charlie and Ben, I will be thinking about, because Joe just, we didn't talk about the cast, right? Because we need to praise them, and just like how, just like watching the interviews, like I am a teenager, like they're just like so, like I'm so happy that these days have this cast in particular, because they are just, they're screen into real life. It feels like they're just as genuine and special and great role models. Not to put that on them, because growing up, our idols had role model placed upon them, and that is unfair, but they are great role models, I feel like. And that role model does not equal perfection. I mean, just say that. Like, that's not what role model means. It's just modeling how you should conduct yourself and move through the world. That was another tangent. I'm sorry.
No, it's great.
But a good one.
It's a good one, because it is something that's true about them, and how they move through the world and how they want to be seen. I think it's also that changes and evolves over time too. And it just seems, and they're so open about being like, this is where I am now in my life, but I might want to do something different later. Or this is like, they just seem like, and it might just be because they're Gen Zs. I feel like Gen Zs are just so reflective. Like, for our generation as older millennials, well, younger millennials, where are we? Older millennials is like the 40s. Like, that's Beyonce. Yes, Beyonce is a millennial. I'm claiming her. She's right on the cusp. And then there's us in.
Are we like mid-millennial?
I think we're mid-millennial, because we were alive and kicking it before the internet became a thing.
In the millennium, yeah.
Okay, and so then we we know all about the internet now. It's a bit different from the ones who just know nothing about the life before the internet.
Our generation is fascinating to me,
right?
Because we were born at such a odd time. I feel like we're like, Walk to Remember, we're straddling two state borders. Like, we're like on two sides of different. It's a strange place to be as a millennial.
We're like at the, just as globalization was beginning to open and the internet was popping. But in any case, the Gen Zs are just more reflective than previous generations. And it's easier for a lot of them to have more frank conversations and be honest about where they are in their life, which is not a millennial thing. Millennial thing is very much, can I get a guide for this? Can I get a book? to understand how we're supposed to be handling this. So it is nice seeing the generation after us be able to be more open. Not to say that it's not scary. I don't think anyone in that generation is saying it's like, oh, it's so easy to just be able to walk out about in the world and talk about yourself. But they are doing it in a way that's comfortable for them, and that's really cool. Now I feel old. That's okay. I like getting older.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Mature. Let's use the word mature.
I'm mature.
With age comes wisdom.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's even shown in Heartstopper. Love
Very
seeing the adults being there for these teens. And with the scene you were talking about, Reed, with Mr. Farouk. I'm sorry, I don't remember the art teacher's name, but when they're standing there and they're talking about it.
Ajay?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think they ever said it in season 2.
Oh.
But I just rewatched season 1.
But like, it is nice, like that was particularly about his experience and not having what Nick and Charlie have. But there's also the layer of being able to talk with another adult who just reminds you that like life keeps going. So whether you had that youthful abandon, just because you're in your, I'm gonna say 30s, doesn't mean you can't have youth, like experience that as an adult. It just would be a little different.
It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes that it's been like a mantra for me for, let's say, almost 10 years. You're exactly where you need to be. So, and that's on a macro and a micro, like, and day to day, it helps me stay present, like wherever I am. Like if I'm, for instance, if I'm hanging out with my nephews who are very young and I feel pulled to do something else, like, oh, I have to do something for work, or oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm like, no, I'm here, I'm present, I'm exactly where I need to be. This is where I'm supposed to be. Nothing else should matter. But like on a bigger picture scale, that quote has helped me, like when I was unemployed and I'm like, no, I'm exactly where I need to be. Things will sort itself out. There's a reason why I'm in this position. And I think that even for Mr. Farouk, like in thinking about how everyone's timing, we're all on our own timing. One thing's not better than the other. His journey happened because it's how it needed to happen. Like, and I think that quote also helps me not regret things, because sure, you can look back and be like, oh, I wish I would have done that differently. But like, also no, because if you don't have your experiences, you wouldn't be who you are right now. So that's something I also, the way the show makes me think so deeply about things. Oh my God, I love it. Like it's, again, it's so simple, but like the way that it can get you like just reflecting and thinking about the past, the present, and the future. And it's such a gift.
There's a cleverness in the simple storytelling. And I think that's something that people really need to acknowledge, because it does really make, exactly. It does make you think, and less can be more.
That's true. I will say though, watching it made me miss that age. Like it really did. Like with when Charlie and Nick and all their friends are together, and to me, teenagers are essentially like puppies. Everything has to be done in a group. We're always laying on one another. We're always bouncing around like we had sugar, even if we didn't have any sugar. Like there's just, y'all, if you're a teenager listening to this, indulge that in your life, like live in that, because when you get older, like that's not actually, the TV is lying to you. That's not happening with adults. Like it can happen, but everyone's usually so busy, or they've moved away, or
you're like, not gonna before work meet at Central Perk for an hour to talk with your friends over coffee. Like that's just maybe it's reality for some people, but it's just, I know for me and a lot of people it's not. So when you're right, it does take me back to like getting off the bus at school in the morning and meeting up with friends before class and in the halls during passing period, and just being in that ecosystem. As much as you try to like push out of it and you're like, oh, because it's a grind. It's every day. You see the same people and it's like, oh my goodness, again. But like when you look back, you're like, that is such a important, pivotal, strange time to be in, that we're just like all together, just four walls of emotions and too much coursework.
Yes.
I'm standing with Charlie. It was a lot.
Yeah.
Let him. I was talking back to his mom for him, I will say.
Oh, she was doing a lot, but he didn't need to do his coursework.
He got it in 5 minutes spare. He did it. Look at our boy go.
Like I'm on her side, but I'm like, he deserves this.
Yeah.
He does. She was doing too much though. I was like, ma'am, I feel like we can work in, why don't we just bring the boy over to study with him? Like I know in her mind it'd be like, that's a reward. I'm like, but it might help him concentrate.
A little Nick for a treat.
Yeah, you know, like get your essay done. He can come over for movie night. I'll make popcorn and set out the pretzels. How about that?
Something to work towards, yeah.
I know. But
I was with Charlie's dad, who was just like, what do I say? What that won't get me in trouble.
He was so cute going up to the step being like, Charlie, do you want dinner? And like it was like, no, sir, he doesn't want, he's mad right now. But his father's just like, I can't bring you your boyfriend, but I can bring you a meal.
It's like, this is not my fault. I'm still here for you.
Also, unsung hero Tori Spring.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
She wants all the smoke, and I support her.
Yes. What a legend.
Amazing. I watch out, David, Nick's brother. I'm surprised she didn't push him down those stairs. I'm just saying.
I would have. She's better than me. I mean, a lot of these interactions in the show have taught me that I talk a big game. I wouldn't, but they're nicer than me. Ben had another thing coming for me. He still does. I'll leave it at that.
Ben, also someone might be seen by him. Might be, and that's how they can unlearn behavior.
Yes, that could be an important. He's included in the journey. I hope nobody does, but if you do, really internalize that.
I know. Listen to Charlie and what Charlie has to say during the pivotal moment that him and Ben have a scene. Just saying.
Oh, such a good scene.
It is. I feel though, like if we don't wrap this up, we will be here for another 3 hours talking about
that might be our dream, but that's not our listeners' dream.
No, but if you haven't watched Heartstopper season 2, or you haven't watched Heartstopper, it really is good. If you're I know some people just don't like YA dramas. I get that. It's skewed too young for you, but give it a chance. It really is lovely. The episodes are like 30 minutes. Sometimes in the first season, it's a little less than that. It's a wonderful, happy journey. If you're sad, just put on Heartstopper.
If you're like in your 30s and you're like, I'm not watching this, like, do it for your inner teen that could probably use some healing and you don't even know. That stuff sneaks up on you. You're watching something and you're like, oh, didn't know 16-year-old me needed this, but here we are.
It's like that cozy cardigan you didn't know you needed. It just wraps you in such warmth.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I forgot you in the back of my closet. Let me pull you back out.
And it's like, that's how I should have handled that moment in my life. Okay.
Lessons to be learned from this little show everywhere.
It really is. Okay, well, that's it for this week's podcast, y'all. We're the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
I'm Reed.
Bye.